Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're not a knight, a monk, or even a peasant with a patch of dirt to call your own. You're the thing they pretend not to see. The shadow under the church steps. The smell that makes noblemen wrinkle their noses. You were born without a name worth writing down, and you'll die without a grave worth digging. This isn't the tale of triumph. It's the tale of someone who never had a chance, and whose absence won't be noticed. Not by the town, not by the priests, not even, in the end, by yourself. Before we begin, do me one small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I find it so interesting to see who's tuning in from around the world. And if you'd like early access to more of these grim history stories, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. You're not born, you arrive. A squalling, unwanted lump of wet skin and wasted breath, dropped into the world like offal from a butcher's block. There is no celebration, no midwife's coo, no blanket waiting to swaddle you in warmth. Your mother, if she is your mother, is too tired to scream, and too used to pain to flinch. She might die that night, or she might not. If she does, no one blames her. If she lives, she doesn't look at you much afterward. Either way, it hardly matters. No one was waiting for you, and no one thanks the stars when you come. Your house, if you want to call it that, is a lean-to shack behind a pig yard, somewhere on the edge of a village that doesn't remember your name a year later. The walls are wattle and mud. The roof leaks when it rains and smokes when it doesn't. You're placed in a bundle of rags that once belonged to a sack of grain and left near the fire, though not too near. Not for safety, just because the woman who birthed you is too weak to move, and she doesn't want to hear you shiver. You are not given a name, or if you are, it's not spoken often enough for you to remember it. Maybe you're called boy, or oi you, or nothing at all. No one keeps track. The church might write you down if someone bothers to drag you to the font, but it's just as likely no one does. You grow like a weed in a ditch, unnoticed, unwelcome, and surprisingly hard to kill. Your earliest memories are shapes and noises. A hand grabbing your arm too tightly. A dog growling over a bone you thought about touching. The cold feeling of pissing yourself at night, and the worse feeling of lying in it until morning. There are voices around you, but none are directed at you, not in kindness at least. You learn language not from being spoken to, but from being shouted at. Words arrive slowly. Move, shut it, thief, and you understand their meaning more by tone than grammar. You try crying at first. It seems like the only thing you're built to do, but it doesn't get you milk. It gets you slapped, or ignored, or dumped outside if you're being too loud. You learn to go quiet faster than you learn to speak. Whimpering is safer than wailing. Silence is safest of all. Your mother, if she's still alive, works too much to feed herself, let alone you. She does laundry for women with fewer children and more bread. She scrubs floors that never get clean and sells things that were never hers to begin with. You're not part of her plans. You're a problem. You're hungry too often, and you don't die quickly enough. She leaves you with other women when she can, and they pass you around like a chamber pot, held at arm's length, wrinkling their noses, muttering things about curses and bad omens. Sometimes you're left with the pigs. Not in a cruel way exactly, just practically. The pigs are penned in, you are not. If you wander off and never come back, it saves someone the trouble of digging a grave. Your belly aches more often than it doesn't. Food comes in handfuls, scraps, forgotten crusts, or whatever you can pick off the ground before someone notices. You learn to chew things before knowing what they are. You swallow spoiled meat and once get sick for 3 days. No one helps, no one asks. You get better somehow. Or maybe you just stop throwing up. In the world you live in, that's the same thing. There are other children, but they don't take you in. They steal from you, mock you, hit you for being smaller or slower. You learn to watch them without being seen. You learn that smiling is suspicious and trust is expensive. The only thing you can afford is distance. Clothes are whatever someone throws away. Your tunic is a sack with holes. Your shoes, if you ever had any, vanish before the first frost. Your toes turn purple in the cold. You try to wrap them with scraps of cloth, but it only makes the blisters worse. You don't complain. There's no point. The only reward for weakness is more suffering. One day a man picks you up by the wrist and sniffs your head. He frowns, mutters something about devils, and drops you into a trough to clean the rot off. The water is freezing. You scream. He laughs and walks away. You get out on your own. No one helps. The pigs watch you shiver and lose interest. You don't remember the first time you see someone die. It happens often enough that the memory blurs with others. Someone coughing too long, someone going still in the night, someone lying by the road for hours before anyone checks. You grow up around death like mould on a cellar wall. It's just there, constant, quiet, slightly sour. Your world is small, a few streets, a stream that sometimes runs dry, a chapel you're not welcome in unless you're quiet and invisible. You learn that the smell of incense doesn't cover the scent of rot in the nave. You learn that saints on walls don't offer help, only judgment. A friar once gives you a look that lingers like a bruise. He doesn't speak, just watches you too long, then turns away. You try to believe he was praying for you. You don't succeed. When it rains, you curl under porches or squeeze beneath carts. Sometimes you wake up wet, sometimes you wake up bitten. You scratch until you bleed. The lice don't mind. They're the most loyal company you've got. Winter comes and you don't die. It's not because of strength. You're not strong. You're not anything. You survive because someone forgets to kick you out of the pig shed one night, and the straw is just dry enough not to freeze you solid. That's all it takes. Not warmth, not love. Just a moment of forgetfulness and a little dry straw. Come spring, you're still breathing. Barely. You're thinner, dirtier, hungrier, but you've made it through. No one congratulates you. No one marks the day. You don't even know what day it is. You just know that the snow's gone, your toes are still attached, and your stomach still growls like it always has. That's enough. For now. Time passes. You're a bit older now. Not grown. Not clever. Just large enough to stop being mistaken for someone worth saving, and small enough to still be overlooked when food goes missing. You don't know your age, no one does. You count years in winters survived and scabs that fade into scars. You've made it through a few, which means you're no longer cute enough to pity and not yet strong enough to steal without consequence. You exist in that dangerous middle, useful to no one, threatening to everyone. You don't live anywhere. You exist around places, behind fences, beneath carts, under porches, near the warmth of others, but never invited into it. You sleep in half-burned sheds and crumbling stables. You recognise the pattern of straw mould, know the difference between rat droppings and mouse droppings by smell, and can tell by the sound of footsteps whether someone is about to ignore you, curse you, or drag you out by your ankle. Your tunic has turned from brown to a colour best described as rot. It no longer covers your knees, and the cloth rubs your chest raw when you move too quickly. You've wrapped rope around your waist to keep it in place. Your feet are bare, have been for so long you've stopped noticing the cuts until they ooze pus. You sometimes wake up with your toes numb, and sometimes with them chewed, once by a rat, once by something you never saw. You kicked, but it didn't run. It just paused, then kept chewing slower. You didn't sleep that night. The lice are constant. You scratch until you bleed, then scratch through the scabs. They nest behind your ears and at the base of your skull. You once tried to crush them between two stones, but your fingers shook too badly and you missed. You chew your fingernails to the quick and spit the flakes into the dirt. There's nothing else to do with your mouth most days. You don't speak much. The words are there, half remembered from curses and shouted orders, but they're slow to come and poorly shaped. Your voice cracks when you try. Some days, you go without saying anything at all. You start to forget the sound of your own thoughts. Silence feels safer, less likely to earn a boot. The older boys are worse now. Bigger, faster, meaner. They see you as a pest, a rival, a waste. They gang up not to defend scraps, but just to remind you you're nothing. One boy knocks your head against a wall until you vomit. Another rubs your face into a midden heap, while the others laugh. You don't scream. You learned early that screaming only makes them linger. The adults have no interest in your survival. You're blamed for missing food whether you touched it or not. You're chased from fountains, from doorways, from shadows that someone claims to own. One man once accused you of cursing his wife's pregnancy by looking at her too long. He dragged you by the wrist through the mud until a priest told him to stop. The priest didn't offer help. He just muttered a psalm and walked off. You sit outside the bakery some mornings, just far enough away not to be noticed at first. You stare at the steam rising from loaves as the door opens and closes. You memorize the patterns of the baker's day, the rhythm of kneading, the tilt of his head when he measures flour, the way he throws scraps to the dog, but never to you. Once you caught a crust tossed near the gutter and bit into it so fast you cut your gum on the edge. The blood soaked the bread, but you ate it anyway. There are no toys, there never were. You play with stones when you're too tired to walk. You name the flies that land on your knees. You once found a smooth bit of green glass and carried it for weeks in your cheek like a toffee, taking it out only to clean it. One day, it vanished. You think you swallowed it. You still feel a tightness in your belly sometimes, and wonder if it's still there. You hear music once from a festival in the next village. Bells, lutes, a reedy voice singing something about saints and seasons. You can't get close. Guards keep the beggars out on feast days, but you lie beneath a wagon and let the notes drift to you. You hum it for 3 days after, until it fades. You try to hum it again later, but it comes out wrong, like someone else's memory. On another morning, you see a man walking down the road with a heavy pack and worn boots. He has the look of someone who belongs to no village, which means he might not kick you. He walks like someone who's been alone a long time and has made peace with it. You follow from a distance. He doesn't look back. You take that as permission. You trail him for half a day. He eats once something dry and hard, and you watch the motion of his jaw. He tosses a rind into the grass and you pounce on it the moment he's gone. It tastes like sweat and mould and salt. You chew it anyway. It sits in your gut like a rock. You don't care. As the sky bruises purple, the man veers off the path toward a stream and settles beside a tree. You don't follow that far. You're not stupid, just desperate. You find a hollow by the roadside and curl into it, using your elbow as a pillow and your forearm as a blanket. The grass is damp. The bugs don't care that you're there, neither does the man. You sleep hard, your dreams are scattered. Broken bread, a woman's voice, the sound of thunder with no rain. You wake in the grey morning to a stiff neck and a strip of dried mud down your cheek. The man is gone. His boot prints vanish into the east. You don't know where he went, and you don't try to follow. You walk back the way you came, only to realise you're not sure which way that was. The trees all look the same. The sky offers no clues. Your stomach growls again, but there's no one around to pretend to pity you. You've wandered 10 miles from a place that never claimed you, and now you've returned to nothing with nothing. No food, no friend, no name, just the memory of a traveller who didn't push you away. That's enough for now. You learn to beg properly, eventually. It's not a skill anyone teaches. No one hands you a scroll and says, "This is how to starve with dignity." But you pick it up by watching the ones who survive longer than others. There are rules, not spoken but enforced. Hands out, head down, never approach too quickly, never too close. Look pathetic, but not threatening. Dirty, but not diseased. Starving, but not so starved you make them uncomfortable. It's a balance you're expected to master before your voice finishes changing. The market is where you hone the act. You linger just beyond the stalls, back pressed against a post, eyes scanning for soft hands and full pouches. You choose your targets carefully. Women with plump cheeks and guilty eyes, men who talk about God with too much certainty. But even then, you're lucky if you get a coin. Luckier still if they don't hit you. Most days it's nothing. Most days they pretend you aren't there. The smells are worse than the hunger. That's the truth of it. Warm bread, crusty, thick, spiced with seeds, roasting meat dripping fat onto coals, hissing like it's mocking you, stewed onions, garlic, and herbs too rich to name. Even the fishmonger's stall has its own cruel appeal. Salt and brine and sharp scales flaking off onto blood-wet wood. You sniff the air like a beaten dog, and it fills your head until you're dizzy. But there are other smells too. Dung, both animal and human. Sour milk, old meat, rot. The stench of leatherworkers' boiling skins and the sharp eye-watering reek of tanners. The piss-soaked alley where the drunkard sleeps. Your own sweat baked into your tunic and clinging like a second skin. Your nose gets better at sorting them, but never stronger. You just stop retching after a while. You figure out how to time your presence. When the morning crowd is thickest, when the stalls are full and the guards haven't eaten yet. Midday is worst. The sun turns the square to soup, and the butchers chase off flies with the same hands they'll use to chase you. Evening brings a second chance. Sometimes there are scraps. Sometimes the bread is stale enough to be thrown instead of sold. If you're fast and lucky and forget your pride, you might catch something before the dogs do. You pick crumbs from gutters. You lick grease off discarded parchment. You drink from troughs and puddles, careful to skim the surface before the silt settles. Once you chew a cabbage leaf, so long your jaw aches just to convince your belly it's eaten. Another time, you swallow a chicken bone whole and spend the next day vomiting behind a coop. You learn to be more careful, but not much. There's a man who sells apples near the fountain. You never learn his name, but he always kicks toward the same corner when sweeping. You make a game of arriving just after the sweep. If you're quick, you get a bruised one. If you're not, the pigs do. You once caught his eye as you picked one up, and he looked away like you were a puddle he hoped would dry. You try pretending to be blind for a while. It works better than you expect. You stumble near carts, hold your hands out like you're feeling for walls. People throw coins just to avoid the guilt of watching you grope the ground. One day, a friar approaches and offers to pray for your healing. You nod. He puts a hand on your head and mutters a chant. When he leaves, you open one eye to watch where he drops his bread. You're not proud of it, but then again, you're not proud of anything. There are others like you, beggars who've lasted longer, some older, some broken in ways you don't yet understand. They guard their spots with fierce quiet. One has a twisted leg and growls when you get too close. Another, a woman with no teeth, hisses when you sit on her steps. You give them distance. You learn whose corner belongs to whom, which wall is safe, which ones draw kicks from vendors with sore feet. Sometimes the guards don't wait for a reason. They just see you, decide you're an eyesore, and drive you off with sticks or fists or the flat of a boot. You try not to run because running marks you as guilty. But you don't stand still either. You walk quickly. You keep your shoulders low. You duck into alleys, into crowds, behind ox carts and beer wagons. You become mist when you have to, and filth the rest of the time. You're not allowed near the church steps on regular days. That space is for the respectable poor, the blind man with the wooden bowl, the widow with 5 children, and a clear line to God. You tried once early on. A woman in fine robes dropped a coin in your hand, and then snatched it back when she saw your feet. You were too slow to bite her. You've never tried again. Feast days are worse. They bring crowds, bells, colour, perfume, processions, gold chalices and white cloth, and priests in embroidered robes speaking Latin like it makes them holy. The whole square fills with bodies, with noise, with food, pies the size of plates, wine that smells like boiled fruit, cheeses that ooze from their rinds, bread stacked high in baskets you'll never touch. It's unbearable. On one feast day, some saint you've never heard of and wouldn't care for if you had, You try to make yourself more visible. You station yourself near the fountain, where the crowd will pass. You stretch your hand higher. You make your voice louder. You say, please, over and over, like it's a magic spell. You even add a cough for pity. You're starving. You think maybe someone will notice. Someone does. A guard. He doesn't say anything at first, just watches you, mouth twitching in mild disgust. Then as the next hymn begins and the priest raises his arms to heaven, the guard grabs you by the back of the tunic and hoists you from the ground. You try to twist free, but he's stronger, and you're too thin. He carries you 10 paces across the square and shoves you head first into a pig trough filled with lukewarm slop and water so green it smells of summer rot. The crowd laughs. Not everyone, but enough. You scramble out soaked, reeking, humiliated. The priest continues speaking, unbothered. The guard wipes his hands on his cloak and says something about keeping the peace. No one throws you anything that day. You don't cry, not in front of them. You walk back to the alley behind the tanner's shop and press your face into your arms until the sun goes down. You smell like pig urine for 3 days. No one gets close enough to care. But you've learned something. You were too loud, too needy, too visible. Next time, you'll beg smaller. You'll make them feel holy for helping, not guilty for looking. That's the trick, after all. You don't want help. You want charity. And charity, you've learned, only comes when the giver gets to feel good about it. You learn the rhythms of the church like a dog learns the rhythms of its master. When the bells ring, when the incense rises, when the congregation kneels, stands, mutters, you learn when it's safest to appear and when it's better to vanish. Saints' days are best. That's when people give, not because they want to, but because they feel they have to. You stop expecting kindness and start depending on guilt. The steps outside the church are colder than they look. Smooth stone, worn down by generations of feet that never walked the same path you did. You crouch near the base, just below the field of vision of the pious, hands tucked under your knees for warmth, chin buried in your collar. You look upwards only when the hymns end, and only when the mood is high. It's important to look small then, not expectant. They don't give if they think you're waiting. You choose saints' days not because you know the saints, but because you know the bread gets better. Holy days bring sweeter wine, warmer meat, and loaves that haven't gone hard. You never taste any of it, of course, but you smell it in the air as it passes by, cradled in baskets carried by women in veils, and children who still have shoes. You sit there, like a gargoyle carved from hunger and dirt, and you wait. Some throw coins, not at you, but toward you, not into your hand, but onto the step near your foot, or into the grass, or into the gutter, as if to say, this is not for you, this is for God. You just happen to be nearby. You know better than to look them in the eye. They hate that. They drop coins for God, but only if you don't remind them you're still a person. If your gaze is too steady, too aware, they pull their hand back. Sometimes they even spit. You watch the richer beggars, older ones, damaged in visible ways with scars or missing limbs, or voices like gravel, and you try to copy their posture. One man has a prayer he recites as people exit the nave, something about the blood of the Lamb and mercy for the wretched. You don't remember the words, but you remember the cadence, and so you invent your own. It doesn't matter what you say, it just matters that it sounds like suffering with a hint of scripture. One time a friar stops in front of you. You expect him to tell you to move. Instead, he places his hand on your shoulder and smiles like he knows something you don't. He says your hunger is a gift, that it's God's way of testing your spirit, that your suffering has meaning, that every pang in your belly is a chance to earn redemption. You nod, because nodding is safe. You don't ask him if he's ever felt that kind of holiness himself. You don't ask if his belly's ever been empty enough to shake. You just let him finish, and then you watch him walk away, humming. Another time, you try to go inside, just into the vestibule, just to get out of the cold. The air inside the church is warmer, thick with dust and candle smoke. You stand against the wall and breathe through your sleeve. A woman passes by, clutching her rosary. She pauses, stares, then hurries off. Minutes later, 2 monks approach. One holds your wrist, the other holds a broom. You're not beaten exactly, but you're encouraged to leave in the way a boot encourages a rat to leave a pantry. You try again a week later, not to go inside, just to sit closer. You clean your face with spit and sleeve. You brush your hair flat with your fingers. You tuck your feet beneath you to hide the missing nails. You think maybe if you look more like a child and less like a warning, they'll be kinder. A priest passes and drops a bean into your palm. Just one. Hard. Cold. You bite it anyway. You start memorizing the liturgical calendar. Not the names of the days, but the patterns they bring. On feast days with music, people are more generous. On days of mourning, they look past you entirely. During Lent, they speak of sacrifice and throw you nothing. During Advent, they speak of charity and throw you just enough to remind you they could do more. You meet others like you now. Children in rags, women with infants who might not be theirs. An old man who walks in circles reciting the same line about St. Jude until someone pays him to be quiet. You form no friendships, no alliances. You trade stories, sometimes lies, but not names. You all know the game. There's only room for one at each corner, one at each gate, one at each holy threshold. Too many beggars in one place ruins the effect. There's one boy your age who smiles too often. He's missing 2 front teeth and wears a belt fashioned from a broken rosary. He claims it brings luck. You don't believe in luck anymore. He shares a crust with you once and you share a bit of cheese you stole from under a cart. The next day, he's gone. You never ask what happened. You just move closer to the spot he used to sit. One morning, you wake before the bells and stake out the corner of the stone fountain near the church. You practice your prayer. You wet your hair so it looks slick with grief. You press your lips into a firm line and widen your eyes. You sit and you wait. The mass is louder today. Someone important must be visiting. The crowd is larger than usual, dressed finer. People emerge with warm cheeks and smiling mouths, singing the final verse. You shift forward on the step. Your hand goes out. You begin your chant. It's the same one you always use. You don't shout. You don't block the path. You just speak. And then it happens. A sharp splash, sudden and cold, strikes you across the shoulders and down your back. You gasp. The smell hits next. Stale water, smoke, and something foul. You turn, blinking through the wet, and see a monk standing behind you, holding an empty bucket. He says nothing, just shakes his head and walks away. A few people laugh. One woman murmurs a prayer. No one helps. No one tells you why. You sit there for a while, dripping. Not crying, not shaking, just cold and still, and beginning to smell like mildew. The next group of churchgoers steps around you. They don't see you, not really. You're part of the steps again, a stain, a warning, a lesson in piety. You leave only when your fingers go numb and your teeth begin to chatter. You find an alley that doesn't smell too strongly of piss and curl into yourself. You think of the friar's words, that your hunger is a gift, that your suffering is holy. You close your eyes and wonder if he still believes that, now that you stink of his brother's bucket. You don't go back to the steps for a while. You learn to wait farther out, near the edge of the square, where people are still close to God, but less interested in proving it. You keep your voice lower, your hands smaller, your hopes down where they belong. That's the new rule. Suffering is fine, but only if it's quiet. The season turns. You feel it before you see it. The sky presses lower, heavier, as if the weight of the months is finally settling onto your shoulders. The air changes too. Thicker, meaner, wet in a way that makes your skin itch before it makes you shiver. Your blanket, if it can still be called that, starts to smell like bread gone sour. After a week it moulds in the folds. After 2, it squelches when you roll it. You keep it anyway. A wet blanket is still a blanket, and a mouldy one still hides your bones. Your cough gets wetter. It rattles now. Not sharp, not painful, just constant, like a leak in a roof you've given up patching. Sometimes it shakes your whole chest, and afterward, you spit something grey and foamy into the dirt. You try not to look at it. There's no point in knowing what's growing inside you. No point in naming the thing that will probably finish you before anything else does. Spring means mud, that's all. The flowers don't matter to you. The green doesn't return for you. It's just the same road with more sucking noise when you walk. You slip more often, lose what little you carry. Your feet squelch in your rags and make you stink worse than usual. You stop trying to stay dry. Dry is a luxury you forgot how to want. Summer is worse. The flies return, thick and clumsy, crawling into your mouth when you sleep, and nesting in the sores behind your ears. You wave them away until you don't bother anymore. They land on your arms, your cheeks, the corners of your eyes. One day, you feel something wriggling inside your boot. You take it off finally, and find 3 maggots in the flesh of your heel. You pick them out with a sliver of wood, and don't tell anyone. There's no one to tell, but it's winter that kills. Always has, always will. The others call it the thinning season. People vanish without notice. A man you sat beside for 3 nights just stops showing up. A woman who used to trade you firewood for crusts is found under a bench, stiff and open-eyed. Her lips cracked wide like bark. The old ones go first, then the sick, then the unlucky, then whoever falls asleep too far from something burning. You sleep in barns when you can sneak in. You find cracks in wooden walls and squeeze through them like smoke. You nest in straw and curl into yourself like a rat, tucking your face beneath your arm and your knees into your chest. It never feels warm, but it feels less cold than outside. That's the measure now. Less cold, never warm. Warmth is for animals that still belong to someone. But even the barns aren't safe. Someone always notices. A farmer's son, a scullery maid, a drunkard checking the hay for coin. They drag you out by the ankle or ear, call you names that sting worse than the kicks. Filth, thing, creeper, muckborn. You stop pleading? The last time you begged for mercy, the man laughed and urinated on your blanket. You still sleep with it. That smell never left. Your teeth rot. One falls out while you chew a carrot that was already soft. Another cracks in half when you grind it in your sleep. The ache is constant now, like your jaw is trying to dig its way free. You press your tongue against the holes and taste iron. You chew less and swallow more. You dream of apples crisp and white. You wake up with blood in your mouth and the inside of your cheek bitten open. Your skin splits at the knuckles, cracks open like parchment when it's too dry. You wrap your hands in cloth when you can, but it never lasts long. Everything you own gets stolen, torn, or too wet to keep. Your elbows bleed, your scalp flakes. The wind finds the thin parts of your face and bites them raw. You lose the ability to shiver. It just stops happening one day. You sit in the frost and shake your arms to test yourself, but nothing comes. That frightens you more than you expected. You begin sleeping near others, even when it's risky. The warmth helps. Bodies radiate heat, even if they smell. You find a spot near a butcher's wall where 2 other boys have taken up residence. They're older than you, not by much, but enough that you stay quiet when they argue. One has a cough worse than yours. The other scratches himself constantly, muttering under his breath about demons in his skin. You say nothing. They let you stay so long as you don't take the centre. You lie between them some nights, your head near their feet, your knees pulled high. The stones beneath you feel like ice. You try to sleep quickly, before your thoughts get too loud. You hum sometimes, under your breath, but softly so they don't hear. The last time someone heard you humming, they threw a bone at your face and told you to shut up before you summoned spirits. One night, snow falls earlier than expected. It comes heavy, wet, loud against the rooftops. You try to stay dry by leaning against the wall, tucking your shoulder into the wooden frame and pulling your blanket around your chest like armour. The boy beside you, the one with the worst cough, says nothing, but curls tighter. His breaths sound shallow. You think about asking if he's cold, but the words stick. What would be the point? You're all cold, and nothing warms by speaking it aloud. You wake before the sun, your shoulders ache, your toes sting. You sit up slowly, rubbing your arms and blowing warm air into your hands. You turn toward the boy beside you and notice something strange. He's still in a way you know too well, still in a way you've seen before. You lean closer, his eyes are open, his lips are blue. His hand, the one nearest you, rests palm up on the stone, dusted with snow. You stare at him for a long time before nudging his boot with your toe. Nothing. You reach out, press your fingers against his arm. Stiff. Not quite frozen, but close. Cold like meat from a cellar. The other boy, scratching, muttering, stirs behind you and glances over. He doesn't say anything, just grunts and rolls away. No one wails, no one prays, no one marks the death. You sit there beside the body until the snow picks up again and starts to hide his face. Eventually, you move to the other side, where his heat still lingers faintly in the stones. You press your back into it, close your eyes, and try not to think. You've survived another night. That's all anyone will ever say about you, if they say anything at all. You don't stay long after that. Not because anyone tells you to leave, no one cares enough for that, but because the cold beside you sinks in deeper once you know it belonged to someone no longer breathing. You walk away before sunrise, not toward anything in particular, just away from the wall, the body, the memory of silence. For days you drift again, through frost-bitten fields, across muddy roads, past villages that look just like the last. Your cough lingers, so does the ache in your feet, but a thought begins to form, dull and desperate, the way hunger sometimes pretends to be hope. You remember someone long ago talking about a monastery, a place where the brothers feed the poor and take in the lost. You never believed it, but belief isn't the same as trying. You walk for hours toward the monastery, your legs aching in that dull, familiar way that means you haven't eaten properly in days. The road winds through hills and past shuttered mills, the kind of path people only use when they're going somewhere sacred or leaving somewhere cursed. You hope you're doing the first, but suspect it's the second. The road is long, and the mud is deep enough in places to steal your boot, if it had any soul left to grip. You nearly lose it once anyway, and for a brief moment, you wonder if turning back would make sense. But there's nothing behind you. And you've heard stories about monks who feed the hungry, take in the lost, give shelter to the least among men. You're not entirely sure what a least is, but you've got a strong suspicion. It looks like you. You're 13 now, maybe 14. The monks will want someone who can work. That's what you tell yourself as you rehearse your pitch aloud, that you can carry water, sweep cloisters, weed gardens, patch walls, anything. Your voice comes out scratchy and your breath fogs the air in weak little bursts. You haven't bathed in over a month. Your hands are cracked open at the knuckles and your shirt still smells faintly of pig urine from 3 towns ago. But if they're holy men, that shouldn't matter. Holiness is supposed to see past dirt, or at least that's what the friars in the cities always claim, right after they look away. The monastery appears just before dusk, rising from a patch of frost-bitten farmland like a stone promise. The walls are high, but not fortress high. There's a small orchard beside it, mostly bare, and a few goats pacing inside a low fence. You see light in a window, orange and flickering, like oil lamps against old parchment. You feel relief before your body catches up to the thought. For a second, your legs forget their weight and your stomach forgets its emptiness. You knock on the gate, soft at first, then louder. You hear the echo through the wood. Nothing moves for a moment. Then the shutter slides open, and a round, pale face stares out at you. A monk, grey robes, clean skin, expression like wet dough. He looks at you the way a man might look at something he just stepped over. You launch into your plea before your courage dries up. You explain badly that you're not asking for food, not asking for handouts, just a place to help. You'll scrub floors, stack firewood, dig latrines. You can sweep the chapel, mend torn robes, haul water. You stammer over some of it, but the message is clear. You'll do anything. You're useful, you're quiet, you're cheap. He doesn't interrupt, just watches you speak until your voice falters. Then he says, "We already have boys, not unkindly, not angrily, just like a man listing what's stocked in the pantry. Flour, cheese, orphans, no more needed." You try to insist. Not beg, just press. You can sleep in the shed. You don't need anything warm, just something dry. You point out that God surely wouldn't mind one more soul tucked in a corner. He says nothing. The shutter slides closed. You wait. 10 minutes, maybe more. You sit on the stone bench near the wall and listen to the bells toll the hour. You think about leaving. Then the gate creaks open, just enough for the monk to step through. He's holding a wooden bowl. It has 2 small pieces of bread inside, stale by the look of them, and a tiny round of cheese so dry it clicks against the rim. He hands it to you without a word. You take it, not because it's enough, but because you don't know if refusing would offend him or God, or both. He nods almost as if to say, "There, that's done," and turns to go. You ask again if you can stay, just for the night. You'll be gone in the morning. You'll sleep upright. You'll be silent. His back stiffens slightly. He doesn't look at you when he answers. "There are rules," he says. "We feed, we do not house. It invites expectations. Attachment." You stare at the bread. You think about attachment. You wonder what kind of man fears being attached to someone like you. Before he goes, he offers something else. Not shelter, not work, a prayer. He places a hand on your head and begins to murmur something in Latin. You don't understand the words, but you recognize the rhythm, just like the friar in town. You stand there still and tired and cold, as his fingers rest lightly on your filthy hair. You feel nothing. He says amen and removes his hand. Then he steps back inside, and the gate creaks shut. You hear the bolt slide. The light disappears from the window. The wind picks up. You eat the bread slowly. The cheese is hard enough that you have to suck it like a stone before your teeth can manage it. You sit against the wall until your knees start to lock. Then you lie down in the shadow of the orchard fence and pull your blanket around your shoulders. Such as it is, you dream of goats chewing in slow circles and a monk placing his hand on your head. Not in blessing, but to push you underwater. In the morning, you wake with 2 new flea bites and a stiff neck. You leave before the monks emerge to walk their grounds. You're polite enough to vanish before they're reminded you were there. Your clothes smell worse after the night. Something about the soil, or maybe the dog that slept 3 feet away from you and kept whimpering in its sleep. You scratch your legs and feel something move. You don't look. You already know. You don't head back to town after the monastery. The idea of those walls, clean, warm, guarded, stays with you longer than you'd like a splinter under skin. You keep walking, not with purpose, but with momentum. Your legs moving simply because stopping would feel too much like giving up. You pass farmhands who don't look up, and cottages that shut their doors before you get close. At one point, you find a crushed turnip by the side of the road and chew it raw. It tastes like dirt and regret. A few days later, just when you're starting to wonder if the road ever leads anywhere that isn't worse, you hear them. Voices, footsteps, the low clatter of wheels and a donkey braying somewhere ahead. A loose procession of travellers heading south, clutching rosaries and relics, feet wrapped in rags and wool. Pilgrims. You spot them at a crossroads, near a crumbling inn, their cart creaking under sacks and candles, and a wooden effigy of some long-dead saint with half his face missing. They speak softly and walk slower than most, stopping to pray at milestones, bowing their heads at chapels, thanking strangers for bread even when they're sneered at. They wear the badge of the scallop shell, stitched to their cloaks or pinned to their hoods. That means something, you think. Something about the road, or maybe salvation. You follow at a distance for half a day before they notice. A young woman with a crooked mouth catches your eye as she dips a rag in a stream. She doesn't smile, but she doesn't shout either. That feels like permission. You inch closer with every mile until you're walking just behind the group, quiet as a shadow, cautious as a fox that's been kicked too many times. No one invites you in, but no one drives you off. That's more than you've had in weeks. You carry nothing but the smell of damp and desperation. Your blanket is still rolled under your arm, stiff with dirt and stained at the hem. You have a bit of bread left from a church step 2 days ago, now hard enough to scrape your gums. You chew it slowly as you walk, pretending the crunch is from crust and not grit. The others don't ask who you are. They ask no questions at all. They simply allow you to follow. At night, they stop in fields or beside broken walls. Some of them sleep in tight huddles near the fire. Others wrap themselves in silence and lean against trees, eyes closed as they mouth prayers into the dark. You keep to the edge of the circle, not too close, not too far. One woman offers you a handful of beans without speaking. You nod, not sure whether to thank her or pretend you didn't notice it came from her own supper. On the third night, someone sings. An older man with a beard that splits at the chin, voice thin but steady. The tune is soft, slow, half a hymn and half a lullaby. You know no words, but you hum along after a while. Others join in, some tunelessly, some with tears on their cheeks. You let your voice rise just a little, trying to stay just below notice. It feels like something close to belonging. The next morning, no one looks at you. No one speaks to you, not even by accident. You think you imagined the song. You think maybe you sang too loud. You try to help where you can. You gather twigs for the fire, fetch water from the stream, swat flies from the cart mule. Once you offer to carry a small bundle, a sack of onions or oats, you can't quite tell, but the man with the beard snatches it back before you can lift it. He mutters something about curses under his breath. You pretend not to hear. One of the children, a girl no older than 6, walks beside you for a time. She doesn't speak, just mimics your steps, making a game of it. You smile. She smiles back. Then her mother calls her away sharply, and the girl's face folds into confusion as she's dragged to the other side of the road. The mother glares at you like you've stained something holy just by breathing near it. You don't walk beside anyone after that. By the 5th day, you've memorized their voices, their footfalls, the rhythm of their prayers. You don't try to join anymore, but you know them. You recognize the way the old woman's ankles pop when she steps. You know which boy always walks closest to the bread cart. You learn which ones spit when you pass, and which ones simply look through you. They call you something behind your back. You hear it first as a murmur, then a whisper. Creeping curse. You don't know what it means exactly, but you understand. You've been named before. Rat, leech, shadow thing. This one's new, but it sits the same. They think your hunger is contagious, that your silence spreads like rot, that your presence makes their prayers weaker, their journey longer. You say nothing. There's nothing to say. On the 7th night, you curl up behind a tangle of brush near the fire, close enough to feel its warmth, but far enough not to be included in the ring. You fall asleep, listening to murmured prayers and the slow hiss of dying embers. At dawn, you wake to silence, the kind of silence that feels wrong, stretched too thin. You sit up quickly. The field is empty. No fire, no voices, no footprints even. The frost has already settled, and their trail has vanished beneath it. They left without you. No one woke you. No one looked back. You stand there for a long time, your breath fogging in the still air, your hands stiff with cold. You don't cry. You haven't cried in years, but you feel something settle in your chest. like a stone dropped into a dry well. Not anger, not grief, just confirmation. The same confirmation you've carried since you could walk, that even in the company of the righteous, you're still an afterthought. Eventually, you pick a direction and walk, not because you know where they went, not because you hope to find them again, but because standing still feels like losing. By mid-morning, your cough returns. By evening, the frost creeps into your boots. You sleep that night in the hollow of a fallen tree, clutching your blanket to your ribs, your stomach too empty to even ache properly. And somewhere down the road, the pilgrims keep walking, lighter by one unwanted soul. You don't look for another group after that. You've learned your place too well. The road feels longer now, emptier somehow, even when it's full of noise. You sleep less, eat less, think less. You start moving more like a ghost than a person, drifting from town to town, with your head down and your hands empty. Then one day, in a village you don't know the name of, someone sees you. It starts with a pear. Half of one, really. Bruised on one side, soft to the touch, but real. You're sitting against a wall near the edge of the village square, your stomach twisting in that dull, useless way it always does when it's been empty too long to make a proper complaint. The market is thinning, the bread stands already picked clean, and the butchers packing up their cuts beneath brown streaked cloth. You're not even begging today, just resting, watching people go home with baskets that smell of better lives. She appears without warning. No grand entrance, no fanfare, just a woman in a worn green shawl, carrying a basket that rattles with the sound of root vegetables. She stops in front of you and crouches, not all the way down, just enough to be eye level. She doesn't flinch at your smell, or your sores, or the way your blanket sticks to one leg, like a bandage gone bad. She reaches into the basket and holds out the fruit. You hesitate. People don't give you food like this. Not directly, not deliberately. They throw scraps. They drop coins and mutter prayers. They pretend it wasn't for you. But this is different. Her hand stays extended until you reach out and take it. Here, she says. You look tired. Her voice is soft but plain, like someone who talks to animals and expects them to understand. You nod. Not because you agree, but because you don't know what else to do. You eat the pear slowly. The juice runs down your fingers and into the cracks of your knuckles. It tastes of rot and honey and something close to forgiveness. You finish it, even though it makes your teeth ache. She watches you the whole time. Then she stands. My name's Alice, she says, adjusting the strap of her basket. You open your mouth to respond, but nothing comes. You can't remember your own name. Not right then. Not fully. It slips through your mind like water through a hole in your hand. She doesn't seem to notice, or if she does, she doesn't press. She simply gestures toward the lane behind her, a narrow thing leading between two rows of sloped thatch roofs. I've got a stable round the back. Nothing clean, but it's dry. You can sleep there if you like, just for the night. You nod again. You follow her through the lane, past a shuttered bakery and a coop full of angry hens. The stable is low-roofed and smells of damp hay and old leather. There's no bed, just a pile of rags near a low beam, but it's warmer than the ground and quieter than the alleys. She doesn't stay long, just tells you not to touch the mule and points to a broken pot where you can piss if needed. That night, you sleep without waking once. No kicks, no rats, no shouting. You curl around your blanket and pretend it's something clean. When the wind picks up outside, you pull the straw tighter around your shoulders and pretend you're far away. Not safe exactly, but tolerated, and that's close enough. In the morning, Alice brings you a bowl of something thick and white. Porridge, maybe. It tastes like dust and salt, but you eat it with both hands. She watches you again, her brow furrowed like she's thinking too hard about something. Then she says, "Don't stay long. They'll notice." You nod a third time. You're good at nodding by now. It's easier than explaining the shape of a life too misshapen to describe. You leave before noon. She doesn't say goodbye, you don't expect her to, but you carry the warmth of her glance with you, like a coal tucked into your chest. You repeat her name under your breath as you walk. Alice, not for any reason, just because it feels good to remember someone's name. Even if it's not your own. You spend the rest of the day near the edge of town, picking through the waste behind the market stalls and keeping to yourself. The memory of the warm stable lingers in your bones, making the cold seem less cruel. You imagine a different life, just for a moment. One where someone like Alice calls you by name and means it. One where you sit at a table and the bread is handed, not stolen. You know it's foolish. You know it won't last, but you think it anyway. The next day is foggy. You wake in a ditch and your ankle feels stiff, like it's trying to fuse to the rest of your leg. You stretch, roll your shoulders, and step out onto the road that cuts through the village square. The stones are slick with mist and the carts are already beginning to rattle past. Wooden wheels churning over cobbles, donkeys braying, vendors shouting greetings to one another in the two cheerful tones of people who haven't gone hungry since sunrise. You don't see the cart until it's too late. A fast one, drawn by two horses, carrying sacks of flour stacked high and leaning at odd angles. The driver doesn't look down, doesn't see you crossing. Or maybe he does and doesn't care. Either way, the wheel catches you just as you step into the lane. There's a crack, sharp, deep, unmistakable, and the world tilts sideways. You don't scream. You can't. The breath leaves you in a rush and your vision blurs from the pain. You hit the ground hard, cheek pressed to the stones, the scent of mud and horse sweat thick in your nose. Your ankle throbs once, then goes numb. Not a comforting numb, but the kind that tells you something important is no longer attached the way it used to be. The cart doesn't stop. No one shouts. Someone steps over you like you're a sack of spilled potatoes. Another mutters something about watching where you crawl. You lie there for a long time. You don't cry, you just grit your teeth and breathe in short, shallow bursts. Eventually, you drag yourself to the side of the road, using your elbows and good leg, moving like something half dead, and trying to decide if it's worth finishing the job. You spend that night behind the butcher's stall, shivering and biting down on the edge of your sleeve every time the pain flares. You feel your ankles swelling beneath your rag wrappings, stretching the cloth so tight it pulses with each heartbeat. You hope it's only broken. You know it probably isn't. You think of Alice again, just for a moment. You wonder if she would have noticed you missing. You wonder if she ever meant to offer more than one night. You wonder if, somewhere in that stable, the mule is still chewing hay like nothing happened. Then you remember the pear, the smile, the warmth of her voice, and you remember the wheel. The world doesn't let you keep good things. It gives them just long enough to bruise you when they're gone. A few months go by and you survive. Somehow. Your limp draws stairs now. Not the kind that invite help. The other kind. The ones that start with a glance and end in avoidance. You feel them before you see them. Eyes lingering too long. Faces tightening in that quiet way that says you've already been judged. People cross the street before you get close. Mothers tuck their children behind their skirts. Men mutter prayers as you pass, or just stare through you like you're smoke rising from a dung heap. You try to walk steady, but the pain shoots up from your ankle with every step. It never healed right. The swelling's gone down, but the bone feels wrong under the skin, like it shifted sideways and never returned. Some mornings you can't put weight on it at all. Other days, you force yourself to move, because lying still feels like giving up. You use a stick now, stolen from a fence post and worn smooth by your grip. It doesn't help much, but it gives people something to look at besides your face. The wound festered for a time. You picked it open to let the rot out, but it kept coming back, thick and yellow, then thinner, tinged with red. Eventually, it dried, or maybe it just stopped bothering. You didn't. You learned to sleep with your legs stretched straight and your jaw clenched tight enough to ache for days. Now it's stiff most mornings, but at least it bends. That's the only progress you get anymore. Your skin has changed. Where once it just flaked, now it peels. Blotches appear, dark in some places, pale in others, edged like burns. Your hands are always raw. Your feet bleed if you walk too far. Your hair has thinned at the crown. You tried to wash once in a rain barrel, and the water turned grey from the filth. You didn't get in again. It didn't help. The cough comes back stronger than before. Deep now. Low. Sometimes it brings blood. Not much, just specks in the phlegm, but enough to scare the people around you. One morning, you spit into a gutter, and a woman walking past sees it. She crosses herself 3 times and hurries away, head down, skirts dragging through the mud. That's the pattern now. You hack into your sleeve, and they mutter about sin. You lean against a wall to rest, and someone tosses a stone at your feet. Not hard, just enough to tell you to move. You stop going near churches, not because you've lost belief, though maybe you have, but because the monks and priests no longer look at you like someone worth saving. They used to see a soul, now they see a stain. One friar lets you eat from the scraps behind the abbey wall, but only after you promise not to be seen. Another recites a blessing in Latin when you pass, though the tone makes it sound more like a warning than a prayer. Once you try to enter a chapel at dusk, just to sit in the back, behind the pillars, where the candles don't quite reach. The priest sees you and steps into the aisle, robes drawn tight around his shoulders. He doesn't say no. He just raises his hand and stares until you turn around. You don't go back. People don't say beggar anymore. They whisper other words. Unclean. Tainted. You hear the word cursed spoken under breath. You hear God's punishment said just loud enough to carry. No one says sick, not directly. That would imply something that could be treated, something that could be cured. They don't want that. They want distance. They want the story of you to end quietly and elsewhere. Children look at you with the same expression they reserve for dead animals in the road. Not quite scared, not quite curious, just unsettled. One boy holds his nose as you pass and sings a rhyme about rotten rats. Another kicks your stick from under you while his father laughs. You wake one morning to find your blanket stolen. Again, the cold makes your joints seize, and your spine hums with pain when you try to stand. You spend the day hunched beneath an archway, watching people step around you like you're part of the filth on the stones. No one meets your eyes. You think of Alice for the first time in days. You try to picture her face, but it blurs with the memory of the cart and the wheel, and the sound your ankle made when it cracked. You stop trying. Flies follow you now, even when you move. They land on your face and don't bother flying off until you swat them hard. You start to smell yourself more clearly, sour, sharp, like wet straw and meat left too long in the sun. You try rubbing grass over your arms, but it only makes the rash worse. Your fingernails turn dark at the edges. Your teeth loosen. You pretend not to notice. Then one afternoon, as you sit beneath the overhang of a boarded-up tavern, a boy passes with a bundle of sticks under one arm. He's young. Not much younger than you were when this all began. He sees you, stops, tilts his head like you're something strange in the dirt. You don't move. You don't speak. He reaches down and picks up a stone, smooth, round, just heavy enough to matter. You don't think he'll throw it, but he does. It hits the side of your head. Not hard enough to knock you over, but enough to sting, enough to draw blood. You blink, dazed, and bring your hand to your temple. It comes away red. The boy grins. "Leper," he says, and walks on. You sit there a long time after that, blood drying on your skin, the word echoing like a chant in a cathedral. No one checks if you're hurt. No one tells the boy off. You were there. Then the stone was. Then you were less than you'd been before. You don't sleep that night. You watch your hands shake under the moonlight and wonder how long it'll be before someone decides you're more than just sick, before someone decides you're dangerous, that you need to be kept from the good folk, that your breath spreads plague, that your skin is a warning. The next morning, Someone throws a bucket of water at you from a window. You're not even near the door. You don't ask why, 'cause you already know. The rumours reach you in fragments. Whispers pass between market stalls, muttered by guards when they think no one's listening, barked in half-drunken warnings from doorways as you pass. Town's a cleaning house, they say, making space, driving out the filth, the sick, the sinful. You don't need the details to know what that means. You've seen the signs before. Firewood stacked too neatly near the square. Ropes tested for strength. The stocks freshly scrubbed as if that makes them more righteous. It's not just about vagrants now. It's about purity, order, God's favour. There's talk of witches, of blight bringers, of those who draw disease with every breath. They don't say beggar outright, but they don't have to. They describe someone hollow-eyed and limping, someone who coughs blood into the gutter and smells of rot. You might as well be the mouldy face on the wanted notice. You think you're 16 now, though the seasons blur together, and your bones feel older than that. You haven't seen your reflection in months, but you're certain you no longer look like a boy. People talk like poverty is contagious, like being near you might curse their crops or turn their child's bones soft. They look at you like they're waiting for your mouth to open and frogs to pour out. You hear words like sin-stained and foul-marked. One woman covers her baby's face as you pass, then throws salt over her shoulder. Another hurls a smear of dung at your back and calls it holy defence. You stop moving through towns during the day. Too dangerous now. You stick to the alleys, the edges, the blind spots in the rhythm of the village. You watch for torches, for pikes, for priests with too much conviction in their eyes. You learn which bells signal prayer and which ones signal punishment. You no longer trust the difference between the two. It's not just talk, you see it happen. In one town, a man is dragged from behind a tannery and accused of poisoning wells. He's toothless and half-blind, a hunched thing who never begged louder than a whisper. They strip him, tie his hands, and nail a sign to his chest before locking him in the stocks. He's dead by morning. No one asks how. They just throw sawdust on the blood and go back to trading onions. In another village, smoke hangs thick in the air for 3 days. You don't go near it, but you hear enough. Someone claimed a girl was hexed by a hunchback. Someone else claimed the baker's miscarried wife saw a shadow pass her door. The fires start the next night. You stay awake with your back to a tree, eyes wide and teeth chattering, even though you're sweating through your blanket. You start choosing your sleeping places more carefully. No more town squares, no more doorways. You stick to the wilderness, if you can find it. A ditch behind a stable, a crawl space beneath an abandoned shed. You cover yourself in leaves, mud, garbage, anything that makes you look less like a person and more like part of the scenery. Your stomach cramps constantly now. You've gone too long between real meals, and the roots you dig up from field edges aren't enough. You swallow them anyway. You suck moisture from moss and chew leather scraps you find near the cobbler's refuse pile. You try to steal a crust from a windowsill once, but someone sees you and shouts. You run, dragging your bad leg behind you, heart pounding so loud. It drowns out the sound of the chase. You lose them by sheer desperation. You don't try again. One afternoon, you see a group of boys throwing stones at a man curled beside the church wall. He's older than you, face swollen with infection, eyes already half closed. He doesn't even raise his hands to shield himself. You want to step in, you want to shout, but you don't. You just keep walking, head down, breath tight. You don't have room for other people's pain anymore. Some nights, you hear footsteps too close and stop breathing until they pass. Other nights, it's the silence that scares you, when even the rats seem to have vanished, and you're left with only the sound of your own ribs ticking like rotten wood. You learn to press your ear to the ground before rising, to sniff the air for smoke, to gauge the mood of a place by how loudly the doors slam. You see a gallows once newly built. The rope is thick and too clean. A scarecrow hangs from it as a warning, its head covered with a sack, its arms dressed in rags, too familiar, in shape and smell. You don't go near it. You already know it was someone like you. Maybe someone you met. Maybe someone you passed in the night and forgot to nod at. You stop answering when people speak to you, even kindly, especially kindly. You've learned that kindness often turns, that a soft voice one day is a shout the next, that the hand that offers bread can also point to the stocks. You don't want anything from anyone anymore, not even pity. One village poster notice by the well. You can't read it, but a boy nearby reads it aloud, proudly, as if reciting a ballad. It speaks of cleanliness, of virtue, of removing the unseen rot. He laughs when he says that part. You do not. You spend 3 nights in a half-collapsed grain shed, too sick to move. You vomit twice, both times dry. You think you sleep, but you're not sure. You see things in the corners of your vision. Faces, mostly. Old ones. Some you know, some you don't. None of them speak. One just points. When you can stand again, you leave the village before the bells ring. You walk for hours with no real direction, dragging your stick through the dirt and flinching at every movement. By evening, your legs buckle. You fall into the hollow beneath a bridge and don't get up. It's damp there. Mould creeps up the stones, and the river below stinks of fish rot and runoff. But it's hidden, out of sight. No carts, no guards, no sermons. You stay there for 3 days. You don't eat. You don't drink much. You sleep in fits and crawl only when the wind shifts. You listen to the sounds above. Wheels on stone, hooves clattering, voices rising and falling. None of it touches you. None of it sees you. You vanish, not in death, not yet, but in a way that feels awfully close. It starts with a cough, but not yours for once. You hear it in the distance, ragged and high-pitched, from someone walking quickly through the market 3 streets away. Then another, closer. Then someone vomiting in the alley behind the baker's shop. The whispers come next. A sickness is moving. Not a seasonal fever, not bad grain or spoiled meat, something worse. Something that lingers in the air and on the skin and in the eyes. You've been sick before, always sick in one way or another. Aches, sores, fever, vomiting. None of it feels new to you. You've lived with rot in your gums and phlegm in your throat for years. But this feels different. Not because of the symptoms, those are familiar, but because for once it's not just happening to you. It's everywhere, all at once, and no one is safe. The streets change quickly. People who used to walk confidently now cross themselves at every corner. Doors slam harder. Curtains stay drawn even when the sun is high. The bell at the church tolls too often and too long. You see carts move through the square, loaded not with goods, but with blankets. Blankets that breathe sometimes, but less and less with each passing day. You hear the word plague before you understand its weight. The way people say it, quiet, frantic, reverent, it might as well be another name for God. The kind that doesn't forgive. You see lists nailed to doors with names crossed out in red. You see priests walking with incense burners, swinging them like clubs to keep the air away. No one touches anyone. No one shares bread. No one gives alms, not even out of guilt. Towns close their gates. The roads grow emptier than they've ever been. Entire villages vanish in a matter of days, houses abandoned, shutters torn loose, livestock wandering without handlers. The silence becomes unbearable. Even the birds seem to stop calling. You walk into one town and find the market square littered with rotting food and overturned baskets. You don't find a single person, just a dog chewing something you don't want to identify. You try to leave, but everywhere feels the same. You follow the roads and see the same signs painted on doorways, the same warnings etched into tree trunks. Keep out. Plague. Death inside. You think about writing your own sign, pinning it to your tunic, just to save people the trouble of guessing. The worst part is that you don't smell any worse than usual, and that now is a problem. Before your stench kept people away, now it invites suspicion. Everyone's afraid of the sick and you've never looked like anything else. You try to avoid towns altogether, but sometimes hunger wins. And when it does, you face the same reaction again and again. Backs turned, stones thrown, threats muttered from behind doors that won't open. Once you approach a field where a farmer is tossing scraps to the pigs. You don't even speak. Just look. He picks up a hoe and tells you to go before he breaks both your legs. You don't doubt him. You leave. You grow weaker. Not because of the plague, at least not at first, but because there's no food left to scavenge. No one leaves their scraps out anymore. The dogs eat better than you. You chew bark one night. You swallow it. You regret it. One morning you wake in a hollow near a burned-out cottage and find your hands trembling so badly you can't hold your stick. Your breath comes in shallow bursts. You crawl to a puddle and lap water from it like a dying animal. You spit most of it up. Your stomach has forgotten how to receive anything. The fever comes that night, sharp and sudden. Your whole body burns beneath your skin. You sweat so much your blanket turns slick. You try to crawl into the open air, but pass out in the middle of it. You dream of your mother, though you can't remember her face. Just the feeling of a shadow over you, followed by absence. When you wake, the sky's grey and your limbs are heavy. You can't tell if it's dawn or dusk. You manage to stand, but your knees buckle. You crawl until you reach the road and slump beside it, hoping someone will pass and offer help. Or at least a kind word, or a kick, something to prove you're still there. A cart comes eventually. You hear the creak of the wheels before you see it. 2 men walk beside it, faces wrapped in cloth. One carries a hook, the other a ledger. They speak quietly to each other, pausing to nudge bundles with the hook. You realise what's in the cart as it nears. Bodies, not wrapped tightly, not cared for. Just limbs twisted around each other, like kindling. Some are already stiff, some are not. You try to move, but your arms won't lift you. You try to speak, but the sound comes out wrong. It's not a voice anymore, just a rasp. The man with the hook looks at you, tilts his head, nudges your side with the handle. You flinch barely. It's enough to make him pause. Still breathing, he mutters, but not like it's good news. The other shrugs. Won't be long. They lift you anyway, one at your shoulders, the other at your legs. You don't fight. You barely register the sensation of being moved. You're too cold, too tired. You don't even scream when they drop you on top of the others. The weight of them is crushing. Bodies sag against you, heads tilted at wrong angles, hair matted with sweat and worse. One hand rests across your chest. It's cold, but not as cold as you'd expect. You close your eyes and try not to breathe through your nose. The cart lurches forward. You lie there, not dead, not alive in any way that matters, just there, waiting. You wonder if this is it, if you'll be tossed into a pit before your heart stops, if someone will notice when you start moving again. If you even can. You think about calling out, just once, just to be sure, but you don't. Because part of you knows the truth. If you weren't dead when they found you, you will be soon enough. You don't know how long you lie in the cart. It might be hours, might be days. The stench grows thick enough to coat your tongue, and the bodies shift around you as the cart jolts forward, again and again. You stop trying to move. There's no point. Your limbs feel packed with sand, heavy and slow, and your head swims whenever you try to lift it. At some point, your fever comes back. Or maybe it never left. You sweat, then shiver, then sweat again. You drift in and out of something that isn't quite sleep. When you wake, it's to voices you don't recognise. Low, flat. Men talking like they've done this 100 times. One curses the weight. Another says, "Leave the ones with breath, no room." A third chuckles and says, "You can't tell half the time." You feel the hook prod your ribs, lightly, testing. You flinch barely. Someone sees it, but the cart's already half empty, and the pit's already waiting. You're not worth sorting. The tilt comes sudden and hard. The cart tips and your body slides with the rest, limbs tangled, shoulders scraping wood, skulls knocking against skulls. The edge of the trench looms, then disappears as you tumble in. You land in silence, not the kind that follows a death, the kind that makes room for one. Dirt hits you almost immediately, a shovelful, then another. Not heavy at first, just the soft patter of earth collecting in the curve of your back. You try to cry out, you do, but your throat is dry and your lungs barely move. The sound comes out like a cough, a twitch, nothing loud enough to notice. More dirt follows. One shovelful lands across your hip, another across your face. You try to lift your arm and can't. You try to roll, but the weight is already there. Small at first, but growing, pressing, settling in all the wrong places. Your mouth fills with the taste of soil. You try to spit, but your lips are too cracked, your tongue too slow. You breathe through your nose. Then that closes too. The pressure increases. Your chest rises once, struggles, rises again, slower this time. You remember, vaguely, a time someone tucked you into a blanket. You remember the weight, the warmth. This feels nothing like that. This is final. This is forgetting. You think of your mother, or maybe just the idea of one. A shape that held you once or didn't. A shadow that left you behind. You wonder what she would have said if she saw you now. Probably nothing. You think of the woman who gave you the pear. Her eyes were kind. You think she meant it. The smile. The offer. You hope she's still alive. You hope she never sees a cart like this. You try to take another breath. The dirt is too heavy now. Your body twitches once, then again, then stills. The shovels keep going. The trench fills, and no one ever knew your name. That brings us to the end of tonight's story. A slow, silent life, buried beneath centuries of indifference, where survival meant obscurity and death came without witness. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into the forgotten lives of history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other forgotten corners of history you'd like to see covered. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps others find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S., Amanda Lamke, and Rich Davis. Sleep well.